All right, you guys, come on in here. Come on in here. I'm your legal bestie, Attorney Simone, and I'm here with a Diddy trial breakdown. Now, I apologize. My background is very average. I am in my pajamas. I'm tired. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and I got to be up at like 5:36 in the morning to get back to the courthouse. But I am going to give you my legal analysis of today, March 27th, the trial of the Diddy case. It's day 10. Today's witness was Capricorn Clark. I'm about to give you the tea, but what I'm also going to give you what you can't get anywhere else is the legal breakdown. And I think you're going to be very surprised and shocked by my thoughts on literally the legal strategy and the legal approach. So order in the court, hit that like as y'all come on in. Y'all were about 1,000 subscribers away from the goal. We want to get to 55,000 before the end of the month. We are almost there. Come on in. We're going to start at the beginning. So, and I know there's buku influencers that are giving their assessment. Today was my first day in New York covering the trial. Prior to that, I've been covering it through the live tweets, the live updates, etc. I was actually in the courtroom. There's a courtroom, and then there is the what is it called? The overflow room. So they're only the first 35 people get into the courtroom, but I want to say it's 21 of them are journalists. They let the press in first, and then it's like 14 lay people. Who's this calling about me? Okay, 14 lay people. Now, so this morning, the first thing I did is I get on in there. Well, first of all, of course, it was getting rowdy in the line. So I want to thank influencer Dana J for giving me his spot in line. Everyone was like, the influencers stuff were really polite, but it was rowdy out there. So I see why some people don't want to get bothered with that and just go to the overflow room. Now, I get in there, and of course, I see Diddy. Let me describe him, y'all. Diddy looks so mangy and disheveled. He has like the edge up that's not an edge up. So he was totally gray. Someone said he looked like Famous Amos. I totally see it. And it's like, it's not a box top. It's box top-ish. Like that's where he was going with the concept. But I mean, it's prison. So apparently, or jail. Apparently they don't believe in edge ups there. So there was none of that. So forget about that. You know, he looked terrible. He looked like he was on the brink of death. There was that. And then his attorneys, Brian Steele, looked like $1 million. Attorney Nicole Westmoreland, she looked like she knew what she was doing. She looked like cute and sweet, but like deadly. Cute, sweet, deadly. And then there was the attorney, Xavier. Yeah, no, Diddy didn't look healthy at all. Diddy, he's not been eating his vegetables. And Xavier Donaldson, he looked like he should be on the cover of like Essence magazine. It's like one of them TV lawyers, but with the shirt off. So he looked like $1 million. Now, Tina Garagos, she looks like she buys all her clothes at Vera Bradley. You know where you get those little monogram bags from? That's where it looks like she goes shopping. And then there was Alexandra Shapiro. Alexandra Shapiro. Now, her father is Alex Shapiro, who represents Jay-Z. He's a big deal in the industry. Stop bothering me. And I would like to say Alexandra Shapiro, her father, Alexandra, the daughter, she looked like, she's a Caucasian lady. She looked like she was really, really good at practicing law while simultaneously being a downtrodden lesbian who drives a Subaru that broke down on the way to court while her house is in foreclosure. Like she's just going through it, just exhausted. Like this trial is really giving her the 1-2 punch. But she looked like she knows what she's doing. She just, Downtrodden. Have you ever seen a downtrodden lesbian that drives a Subaru that broke down on the way to court and whose house is in foreclosure? That's Alexandra. Now, all right, let's get back to what matters. So here's one of the interesting things that when they opened up going over objections, and these objections were actually really critical. So the prosecution, actually the defense was objecting to allowing in any of Cassie's statements about abuse that were made in front of Capricorn Clark. And the judge was like, the judge basically was like, we're going to deal with this on a case-by-case basis, but that he didn't think it would be a big deal because Capricorn was also going to be able to testify as to any abuse that she personally saw. Keep this in mind when I talk about the objections, because in the end, this case largely is going to be won or lost based on what stuff was allowed in on the objections. Let me explain to you why objections was so important here. In the second objection that was clutch. Thank you so much, Sensei 7. Here's the other objection that was on the table that was very important. Is the defense is working to strike Kid Cudi's testimony that he already gave, right? He already gave testimony. And remember, there was a section where he talked about being at the Soho house, having a conversation with Diddy. And they had their talk, and at the end, he grabbed Diddy's hand and he was like, yo, what about my car? And Diddy was like, I don't know nothing about your car. And the prosecutor said, well, what did you think about that when he said that? He was like, I felt like he was lying. They're trying to get all that struck. They want to get any testimony related to Diddy lying about the arson, or also strike any testimony where they were like, Diddy's dangerous, or I know he's hurt other people, any of that. Okay, let me tell you why that's so important. Because when the jury goes in to deliberate, if the judge rules that something is struck, when the jury goes to deliberate, if they say, hey, we want to see the transcript from the testimony regarding, the Soho house. If it's struck, they don't get the sentence where Kid Cudi says, I think he was lying about the arson. They don't get that. So striking testimony is really critical because it means even if the jury heard it, they're not allowed to consider it. It cannot be any part of their decision making. And what happens a lot of times is like both sides, right? We'll try to sneak something in because we know that like once you say it in front of a juror, it's really hard for somebody to unhear something or unring the bell. But that's basically just a sneakier way to get something in. It says, why isn't the jury allowed to know that Cudi thought he was lying? Oh, okay. So there is an hearsay exception that deals with opinions. If an opinion is based on your personal assessment of something, you can say that. So like if someone gives me some cake and they're like, so Simone, when you had that cake last Tuesday, what'd you think of it? I can be like, oh, I thought it was dry. Right? That's my opinion because it's based on my personal perception. But I can't say, well, Sheila told me they dropped it on the floor and they dropped it on the floor before they served everybody. I can't say that because it's not a personal opinion based on my experience. So they're trying to get it excluded based on a rule called 702, which is where it may be their opinion, but that opinion is not relevant and it's not based on any specific facts that are helpful. So yes, I am here in New York. That's why I have this backdrop. Yes. So the judge said he's going to make a decision tomorrow, but they're also trying to exclude Judge Don's testimony. All of these things are going to be key. And the judge is like, look, these people just testified. So they're making the prosecution submit the reasons why this stuff should be kept in or eliminated ASAP. I'm going to give you the recap of some more testimony. Then I'm going to conclude why these damn objections were so important. Now, mind you, Diddy hates this lady. Okay, Diddy hates Capricorn Clark at this point. The backstory, she started working for him in 2004. They were like social friends because he was dating her homegirl. Testimony was later. Okay, let's start there. He was dating her homegirl. They were social friends. Then she was working at Def Jam. Capricorn Clark was working at Def Jam when a headhunter reached out to her and was like, hey, there's this position. I think you would be perfect for it. It's for an entertainment mogul, blah, blah, blah. She was like, wait, is that for Diddy? They were like, yeah. How'd you know? And she was like, I know him personally. So she does the interview. She gets the role. Now, the headhunter is key because she works in the job for a little while, for a few weeks. And then Diddy takes her on a walk. He likes to go for walks, apparently, through Central Park. He's taking her on a walk. Earlier in the day, they have a good walk. And then apparently later at some point, we all know his arch nemesis is Suge Knight. Later, he finds out that when they took her, whatever company she worked at prior, I think it was prior to Def Jam or whatever, was with Suge Knight. Her best friend has kids by Suge, whoever that is. So Diddy's livid. So Diddy and his security then take her later that evening at nighttime, at 9:00 at night, take her back to Central Park, bring her into the woods, and tell her, basically cuss her out and tell her, why didn't you tell me that you worked for Suge? And she's, she doesn't say it, but the gist of it is I thought you knew. And it's no, he absolutely did not. But he told her, you mess around with me, basically, you're going to come up missing. Somebody's going to come up missing. And so then she gets terrified. Hold on a second. Yes. Okay. It was 9:00 Central Park. It was Diddy and Paul, his security guard. The witness now, and Paul and these security guards, watch. They're going to have immunity. Maybe not all of them, but some of them are. Because again, they're either going to be co-defendants or they're going to be witnesses. The way they're going to be able to pin this case down is going to be with the security guards. Because there was never a time Diddy did any dirty work where either one of the security or a driver was not taking him where he needed to be, or toting a weapon, or backing him up. The only time Diddy ever even would whoop on anybody would be while security is standing there preventing people from fighting back. So he told her, he brings her into Central Park at 9:40 at night. He said he would unalive her. And this was regarding Suge Knight. He said if anything happens, he would have to unalive her. And they asked well, what does that mean? And she was like, well, he was going to hurt me if anything happens, I guess, if he felt she was unloyal. This is a good example of RICO, actually, because his security guard was standing right there. So it was she couldn't run, she couldn't fight, any of it. Here's the problem, y'all. That was the kidnapping. That was the first example of kidnapping. I said, surely not. Overall, there are 3 instances of kidnapping that are being alleged. All of them pertain to Capricorn Clark. None of them pertain to Cassie. So for all those are Cassie was kidnapped from the fight in the hotel hallway. I hear what you're saying, but no, not under California law for reasons I've already explained. They did not move her far enough. It was Capricorn. Y'all, this was such a dumb idea. Listen, there were 3 instances. I'm going to give you all 3 of the instances of kidnapping, and then I want to hear from y'all in the chat, because my concern is this, y'all. My concern is that these are regular, everyday people on this jury. We got a deli worker. We got to look like somebody's black grandma, somebody's black granny. We got somebody's Hispanic granny. We got an old, bald-headed, financial executive. Listen, when we're talking about everyday people, when we think of kidnapping, we don't think of your boss taking you into the woods and threatening that, if you do anything disloyal, he'll make you go missing. That's not what we think of. We think of picking you up, with a weapon, taking you from one location to another. I think that with this kidnapping, the prosecution probably overreached. Instead of all 3 of these instances, and if you watch my morning recap, right after lunch. You'll see what I mean. And I'll break it down again. But so the first one was this incident at the park. I feel like with these incidents, they would have been better off maybe deciding one of the three that they were really going to go for. But I get it. They threw in all three examples of kidnapping. So that first one was the park, because I believe his security had a weapon. And she was of the impression she couldn't leave. She couldn't go anywhere else. It was at night and it was frightening. It was frightening. They asked her, well, why didn't you quit? And she was like, because I felt that if I quit at that point, it would be more suspicious and he would find me disloyal. Also, one of the things the prosecution is not doing, I felt wasn't doing a good job of, was making clear that when you work in a niche industry like music, in a city like New York, you can't leave someone like Diddy on bad terms because you'll be blackballed for the rest of your career, which she is and was. I think they needed to do a better job of explaining it wasn't so easy as just quitting a job from Diddy, because he will badmouth you to everyone else in the industry and no one else will, give you a shot. So the first incident was the Central Park. She did mention being blackballed, correct. I'm going to get into that. The first incident was Central Park. The second one, some jewelry came up missing when they were on their way to Miami. She discovered it was her job to be like, hold the jewelry. It was jewelry that was on loan from Jacob, the jeweler. Now, mind you, when jewelry does come up missing, jewelry is always insured. There's insurance that comes in place. But either way, she was supposed to hold the jewelry, comes up missing. As soon as she finds out, she tells security, and they're on their way to the airport. She tells everybody, she says, lock everybody down, search everyone until we find the jewelry. Ultimately, what they end up doing is Diddy tells her, all right, well, you need to go back and figure it out. That's what Diddy tells her. So with his security, she goes back. They're like, okay, the security goes to her house, searches her house, her stuff, her roommate's stuff, doesn't find it at her house. Then he comes back and gets her the next day, takes her to this abandoned warehouse, and then locks the door behind her in this spooky, think of Power, like on Power when they be having them gang shootout fights, pow, pow. That's what it was like. Takes her there. And there's this big fat man she's never seen before. She said he was so fat, he was the size of 5 people. Okay. So she couldn't just run up out of there. Because first of all, his driver/security brought her there. And then once he brought her up to the 6th floor where it was at, which was totally under construction, like it was one of those places where if you scream, nobody's going to hear you. It was totally freaky. Locked the door, locks her in. The big fat man that was the size of 5 people says he ties her up to a lie detector, makes her take a lie detector all day to the end of the workday, and says, if you don't pass this, you're going to be swimming with the fishes. In other words, we're going to unalive you. We're going to unalive you. Now, mind you, she's only making $65,000 a year dealing with this. She's got to work from 9 a.m. to 4 a.m. and making 65. Hell no. But this was back in, she started with him in 2004. First day, at the end of the day, the man tells her it's inconclusive. He then takes her home and the next day goes pick her up in the morning, has her come back, does this for 5 days straight. They strap her to this lie detector for 5 days straight. In the morning, they make her do it all day, then take her home and tell her it's inconclusive, make her do that. I think it was almost like mental warfare. She said she was crying, she was terrified, all of the things. Then at the end of the week, they told her, Puff said you need to report to work on Monday, and acted like nothing happened. Mind you, Puffy was never there. Puffy was never there. Puffy never even discussed it, and she never discussed it with him. Y'all, that's supposed to be kidnapping number 2. That's supposed to be kidnapping number 2. I think the average working person is going to, don't get me wrong, that is kidnapping. That is kidnapping. But I think the average working person is going to have questions like, well, why did you show up on Monday? Why did you keep working for him? Blah, 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 blah. Fast forward, the third incident is related to the kid cutting incident. She elicits testimony. She gives testimony that says basically she found out from Cassie. Cassie was dating him and told her, girl, what are you doing? You're going to get us killed. Objection. The judge struck that. The judge was like, you jurors have to disregard it. You can't consider it. Because what she was trying to say is we all know Diddy's temper. We know how Diddy moves. If Diddy finds out you're with Cuddy, she said, we're all gonna get pow pow. And I know she said, like, she was very believable. She was not sitting up there lying. Hold on. So she says that she ultimately gets Cassie a burner phone and was like, hey, you need to use this. And she proceeds. But ultimately, Diddy finds out about Kid Cudi and her. Diddy then Kid Cudi and Cassie. So Diddy then knocks on her door, beats on her door, actually at 5 a.m. in her apartment complex. Now, mind you, how does Diddy get in? He shows up to the guard desk, the security desk of her complex, with a pow pow, threatens security with a pow pow, and tells to let him in. He does. And then security gets fired the next day for letting Diddy in with the pow pow to harass old girl. When Diddy gets there, Diddy then gets there and says, yeah, she was petrified. Da, 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 da. Hold on. Oh, here it is. I want the exact. Yeah. Diddy then gets there and he like cusses her out. He says all the stuff about like, how did you not tell me? Blah, 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 blah. And in turn, he tells her, oh, yeah, I forgot about these. Oh, yeah, then they got to fight. Hold on. He tells her, how did you not tell me about Kid Cudi? Blah, blah, blah. All this information, he was like, how did you deceive me? He was like, get your A in the car. We about to go unalive this MFer. And she's like, what? No, I don't want to go. He was like, no, we're about to unalive this mofo. So at pow pow point, he forces her to get in the car and ride to Kid Cudi's. Then when they get to Cudi's, he forces her to call Cassie to get Cassie to come back and tells her, this is what makes a kidnapping. He says, I'm not going to release you until Cassie comes up here. That one, I think, is the only one that they probably should have pursued. That one is absolutely the kidnapping. You then took this girl at 5 a.m. at Pow Pow Point to Cudi's house. Then they go in, they burglarize his house. They look around for all this stuff. Then they said Diddy had, she had called Kid Cudi, to warn him. She gets caught. She calls Kid Cudi, she calls Cassie and says, hey, Diddy is here with a pow pow. He forced me into his car with a pow pow. We're at Cudi's house. He's here trying to kill him because he said, I am going to unalive this man, right? So she's telling Cassie this, and then she hangs up. Now then, on Cross, conversation comes out that before she called Cassie to warn Cassie, she called her bestie, Lauren London. She calls her bestie, Lauren London. So defense is like, well, were you really that scared for Kid Cudi's life? If you didn't even call Cudi first, you called your bestie, Lauren London. Yeah, you called your bestie, Lauren London. Well, she was saying, well, you have to understand, like at that moment, it wasn't about Cudi. It was about me. I had to gather my thoughts. I wanted someone to know where I was in case something happened to me. And this part was really sad. She then says, I don't have parents. I don't have anybody. It's just me. I needed somebody to know where I was if I came up missing. And in the beginning of the testimony, she revealed that in high school, her father died. And then her mother died of OD off of powder. So she don't play with that powder. So it was just her in this world trying to make it. She didn't finish college. She didn't finish college. She went into the music industry. So her career was everything to her. But the kidnapping, I want to be clear. So the kidnapping allegations were all her instances. But the problem is this. She kept going back to work for him. He would kidnap her, let her go. She'd go back to work for him. She never officially left. What ended up happening in 2012 was the final kidnapping, not the final, but the Kid Cudi kidnapping at Pow Pow Point, right, at gunpoint, that happened in January of 2011. She sees Harvey Pierre in the south of France. She tells him about it. And then they end up firing her. They say that they are firing her for cause. They say that it was because of her vacation, because she took an unauthorized vacation. But she says she had never taken vacation ever before in her career. This is important, y'all, because ultimately she files a lawsuit against Diddy in 2012. And this is what impacted it all for her. In 2012, she files a retaliation lawsuit against Diddy. In doing that lawsuit, she's basically saying she was illegally fired for telling both Harvey Pierre and HR about the Kid Cudi incident. It is illegal to fire her and not reprimand the person who kidnapped you, right? But what happened was they literally on cross, they took a text message from her. She sent it to HR. And in that message, she says, oh, Harvey and Diddy are being petty again. They just don't want me to be happy. They never want me to see me happy. I was on vacation and they kept sending me emails and work to do, and they're being petty. So Diddy actually had a decent paper trail. Now, anyone with sense who's worked in corporate America knows it was total pretext. Pretext is what you call it when you really want to fire somebody for an illegal reason, but you pull together just enough paperwork to give you an excuse. So that's what they did. They end up firing her in 2012, and they claimed that they fired her because of her vacation, and that she sent this message calling her bosses petty. That was immature. That was not smart. She was like 28 at the time. She gets a lawyer. Her lawyer successfully pursues a retaliation lawsuit. Here's the problem. She got pennies for that. Whatever it was penny. Yes, paper in the files. It was just a little bit. Yeah, and she was protected under a Whistleblowers Act if this was a normal industry. But we're talking about a RICO enterprise. So instead, from that point on, this man blackballed her. Y'all. So the truth, what was unveiled is she continued to try to go back to working for Diddy up until last April 2024. Now, in April 2024, they elicited testimony that she hired an attorney after Cassie's lawsuit. She said she was really disturbed by it. She hired a lawyer, and they were like, well, yeah, but you said you wanted to come back as his chief of staff, get him into rehab, do all this stuff. Well, what did someone was asking, how did she afford her own place near Kid Cudi? Diddy's company paid for it. It was a company paid for apartment. So one of the things that she complained about is that this layoff, it didn't just cause her to lose her job. She lost everything. She lost her apartment. He had been paying for her apartment for at least like 2 years. So now it makes more sense. Okay, you're making $90K a year, but you are getting a paid for an apartment. That's huge. He also paid for her car. She lost her car. She lost her benefits. She lost everything when she pursued this whistleblower retaliation claim. But most importantly, he then blackballed her. Y'all, she testified. They asked her, well, were you able to get any other jobs? She said she had an interview with Jimmy Iovine. She was so excited about. Jimmy Iovine is a big, big wig in the music industry. She was so excited about it. Do you know she shows up at the interview? It was a fake interview. It wasn't a real interview. Jimmy Iovine was convincing her to drop her lawsuit. He says, you need to drop this suit, leave Puff alone. If you don't, it won't end well for you. That's what Jimmy Iovine said to her. Do you know that the defense objected, the judge struck? Psh, all of that. That was so critical. So my point for today is that today the Capricorn's testimony was cool, but I feel like the defense won today based on their objections and what they prevented the jury from ever considering. For me, that is huge that Jimmy Iovine, one of the head honchos of the music industry, says, drop your lawsuit. If you go against Puff, that's what he said. If you go against Puff, it will not end well for you. Stop. This is why she kept going back to him. She said, I just wanted my job, my life back. They said, you wanted your job back. She said, no, I wanted my life back. In other words, she wanted her career back. She wanted to be able to work. 2016 or 2015, she ended up getting pregnant, having a child. Her child is autistic. He is nonverbal. He cannot speak. She is an orphan. She has no mama. She has no daddy. She is her child's sole provider. This is all she has. Thank you so much for the super sticker, anything but the norm. So I want you guys to know, like, the defense, what they were able to exclude is what is going to diminish the power of her testimony. I was happy to be in the courtroom so that I could break this down, but it says evidence can be circumstantial or immediate. Yeah, that's true. But with her, I think part of what was so critical was that it was very powerful of the defense to be able to go in and be like, it's not real kidnapping, because if you were truly kidnapped, you wouldn't go back and work for him. That's why it was critical for the prosecution to be like, no. She kept coming back because he would blackball her from any other opportunities. So that was Jimmy IV, I just mentioned. Then she had an interview with CAA. CAA is one of the biggest agencies. She was totally skilled for it, blah, blah, blah. She goes to her CAA interview. Who shows up? Andre Harrell and Puffy pop up at her interview. They're walking the halls of the entity and they're literally hassling her and giving her a hard time, and she does not get the job. They said, did you ever get a job? She said, yeah, I got one. They said, where? She said, Primary Wave with Chris Lighty. They said, what happened with that? She busted out crying. She said, he died the day before I was supposed to start. She said he died the day before he was supposed to sign my contract. Gone. Guess what, guys? I firmly believe, after listening to today's testimony, Diddy had something to do with Chris Lighty passing away. Now, I'm not going to dive deep into that, but I want to let you know Chris Lighty died of very suspicious circumstances. It's claimed that he unalived himself, but his entire family says no, he did not, including 50 Cent himself said he wanted to launch an additional investigation into that man's passing. Well, in Capricorn's testimony elicited hours before, like in the morning time, she said this about her job with Lighty in the afternoon. In the morning, she testified that when Diddy had told her, like, regarding the Suge Knight situation, or one of the times he was upset with her, I can't remember which one, he had told her, you basically don't F with me. I will unalive you and I'll make it look like you unalived yourself. Because that's exactly what happened to Chris Lighty. That is exactly what happened to Chris Lighty. So in other words, every time she tried to leave, she could use her resume, she could use her experiences to get another job interview. And he would sabotage the interview. He literally blackballed her from the industry. So that's why she would go back to him and ask for another job. It wasn't that she wanted to work for him. She just wanted to work. With me in my industry, just like loving the law and what I do, I could relate from the perspective of if I had worked, like in my industry, if you work at a big firm, if you were to get fired from a big firm, no other firm of that magnitude will touch you. There's a stigma because they'll pick up the phone. The partners know each other. They'll call each other, and you could never work at another big firm again. So I can relate to that. I think the challenge is going to be, I don't know that that six pack of white women, because that's what there was. I'm concerned. I think there's going to be a problem getting that six pack of white women to communicate to that jury. I'm saying it because her testimony is done. They're not bringing her back. So if they're going to pull that together, they would have need to pull that together in the closing arguments. But I wrote in my notes, I said, because she cried a lot in her testimony. She would cry. And multiple former workers of Diddy's have cried on the stand, including that big fat white boy. When he got up there, what was his name? James David or David James or whatever the hell that boy's name was a few weeks ago. That was a big old boy. He's probably like 6'3", heavy set boy. And he sat up there and he cried. It's because they saw so much in his situation. One of the things that broke him on the stand was him recounting some of the abuse that he witnessed Cassie go through. And my point is this: I don't think that the prosecution is doing a good job of eliciting the emotional impact of the trauma that these people experience as workers. So for me, I wrote down, give me something to cry about. When Capricorn was on the stand today, I wanted to cry with her. I wanted to empathize with her. I wanted to be upset with her. I couldn't figure out. I mean, the stories she told, yes, they were bad. Here's what I would have wanted to hear. If I was on the prosecution team, baby, I'm pulling out the kibbles and bits story. I want to hear about how you had your son and you couldn't provide for him, or you'd go on an interview and you'd be so excited and you'd get 3 or 4 interviews down the road, and you'd go to lunch or to dinner with, the HR and the hiring person, only to find out Diddy placed a call and that was that. I want to find out about how you had to move in with a homegirl or a cousin or a dog or whoever because you couldn't provide for your child because of Diddy blackballing you. I want to hear how desperate you were. Tell me about how you almost sold some coochie. I don't know. And how you almost did that. And then as a result, you sent that email to Diddy talking about you wanted to come back there. I know that desperation. I've loved and I've seen people who've had that desperation, but that was not elicited in the testimony. And the problem is you don't get 2 shots. You don't get 2 shots. Yes, these women, I don't believe that they can relate to the jury. And I think that was very smart of Diddy's team to say, we want people who, yes, they're lawyers now, but at one point they were reminiscent or representative of those people. Somebody said, I need to be a lawyer there. I still think like the stories that were elicited that she talked about were horrendous. Thank you so much. Lacey Word, it says, once a witness is dismissed from the stand, can they be summoned again later in the trial or is it over? It's very rare that they can. It has to be something that could not have been obtained before or clarifying something urgent. But usually, no. This is at this point, it's wrapped for, and it's super emotional. She wanted to get the hell up out of there. Bless her heart. She really, really did. But like they really did not humanize it. And I think the problem is this. I think what's going on is there's so many different witnesses that the prosecution needs to call that they're really just trying to get them in and out in a day. I think that the prosecution is so focused on like, oh, the law, like it's a checkbox. But at the end of the day, yeah, that is how the law works. But at the end of the day, the person who tells a better story wins. And on today's facts, I just think for our average, hardworking, all-American juror, this ain't what kidnapping looks like for them. And for the incident, the at gunpoint Kid Cudi situation that truly was an example, the fact that happened in 2012, and for the next 12 years, this woman is trying to go back and work for him. You got to explain why she would do that. And I think people could understand that desperation, but you got to tell them the story. They don't need to sit up there and use their goddamn imagination. Y'all tell me, how did the jurors respond to her testimony? I feel like they leaned in and they were listening. Thank you, High Vibe. But I also think they were confused because it was like when you see somebody crying and stuff, you're like, I want to empathize with you, but the parts you're telling me, it sounds like whenever you hear people talk about the music industry or the fashion industry, one of those industries that everybody wants to work in, it sounds like, oh, you got a messed up boss. But I think the issue is it was really difficult to hear why you kept wanting to work for this man all the way into 2024. And ultimately what she said with trying to work for him last year, she said, effectively, after reading Cassie's lawsuit, and mind you, she already settled a lawsuit in 2012, and I'm going to get back to that. And so here's the thing. In 2012, she did ultimately settle the lawsuit, and Diddy was supposed to write a recommendation letter for her. She wrote it. He was supposed to sign it. Well, in 21, she testified that she was trying to get another job, and she really needed a reference letter for him, and he refused to give it. Well, if you have a good employment law settlement, one of the things is that person has to write you a reference letter. It's a standard one, and it never deters from that. The problem is when you're dealing with the Diddies of the world, they don't follow the rules. They don't follow the law. Well, I thought it was really interesting today that her lawyer, The prosecution kept trying to get admitted into evidence her settlement amount that she settled with Diddy for in 2012. Baby, they were not letting it in. They would not let it in. Defense objected. The judge never let us find out how much she settled her case for. Here's why that's significant. Y'all remember with Cassie's testimony, oh, they wanted us to know about all her settlements. Remember, they wanted us to know that she got 10 million from Diddy. I'm sorry, 20 from Diddy, 10 from the hotel. Because they were trying to basically paint the picture of she's been compensated, she's been made whole. Let's move on. Like, don't even worry about that. So I kept saying, like, why are they fighting so hard all day, even in the afternoon? The prosecution almost got it in, and they did a sidebar, and the judge excluded it. They never got it admitted. Why? Because it was a Peasley amount. It was going to be something very small and minor. But the reason that that's relevant, y'all, and I couldn't believe that the prosecution did not argue this. Here's what I would have argued. I said, Your Honor, this directly relevant. They have opened the door. They continue to say and imply that she returned to work for him because she enjoyed it. She returned to work for him because she was desperate. She was desperate for that money, Your Honor. That settlement was only for $40,000 or $50,000, or it ended up only being $40,000 in her pocket. That's not enough to take care of an autistic son for the last 12 years she's been blackballed, but they weren't able to get it in. And that was me as a lawyer. I was like jumping out of my chair. I was like, this is relevant. They do need a sister on the prosecution team. Here's the thing, because I can tell you what people care about that look like me and act like me. And you have to make it to where we, the regular people, care about y'all's rich people problems. We don't care about your rich people problems. And it sounds like a scorned employee. It arguably sounded like, why was the judge siding with the defense? So the defense with the settlement was saying it wasn't relevant. It wasn't relevant. That's what verbally that we could hear that they kept getting at. I feel terrible for her. And part of when she started to cry would be when she realized, I think, how it was like she was getting frustrated because he kept harping on, but you kept wanting to come back. You kept wanting to come back. And she was trying to explain. She was like, I wanted my life back. I just wanted my life back. And yes, someone had said, but she flirted with him. Yes, that she had said, here it is. That she had said that she had a crush on him. Y'all, if you have ever worked for or dealt with a narcissist, you got to butter them up before you ask for something. And yes, there was a text message that was put up where she said, I always had a crush on you. That was sent in like 2021 when that was when she needed the recommendation letter to get either a job or some service. She needed like a job for her son. That's what she said. She was desperate for this recommendation letter or the reference letter for whatever role. She never got it, and she never got that job. Well, she's buttering him up, and she's telling him, I always had a crush on you, But the truth is, that's how those people work. And she even sent other messages and emails that were like, hey, you've been mad at me long enough. I feel like it's the statute of limitations. She'd say stuff like that because she was really trying to get this man to, there we go. Yeah, she was really trying to get this man to take her back, as far as take her back to work with her. But it was really sad. But again, I just don't think that it was communicated well enough to a working class jury like that. And then let me say this. Hold on. Was she the only witness today? That's it. Thanks, Keisha, for the super chat. She was the only witness today. Her testimony stacked on top of others, I do believe was very strong at communicating RICO. Here were the RICO crimes or elements that were supported today from her testimony. Yes, I already talked about the kidnapping. Of them all, that was the weakest. But she also gave great tampering with witness testimony. Specifically, after the Cuddy incident, she said that Diddy had told her and made her call Cassie and say, listen, y'all better tell Cuddy. He better not tell the cops. If he does, all three of y'all are going to come up unalived. And Cuddy never told the cops. He told them about the arson. He never said Diddy is who did it. So someone was like, he did tell the cops. No, he never said Diddy did it. That was tampering with witnesses. And then she also testified to the narcotics distribution. She talked about getting substances for him because he would get substances in his own name, but he was so addicted, he would surpass the amount you could get in a month. That's how she had to get him in other aliases and other names. So if you know about like opiates and stuff, you can only get so many per month, anything that's controlled. And he would use up all his and one more. So she'd have to get him in her name. Also, he talked about a time he wanted powder and her mother died of that. So she was like, no, I'm not getting it. Who's it for? And he was like, not me, in word. Because and that was their testimony that was trying to establish he was getting it and he was distributing it to others. But then there were other times when, yes, she would obtain enough for him and he would use the Molly X, the different things like that. So yeah, there was also supportive testimony for those things. And it also really, my light went out. Guess that means it's time to go. But it also really it did a good job of supporting just how the RICO enterprise worked. And overall, what I thought is if they're going to try to get this, I mean, obviously they're trying to get the conviction, but if they're going to bring it home, they have to get his security on the stand. You're going to have a Roger Bonds or the D-Rock, the substance distributor. You got to have something like that. Yeah, his lawyers really are ready. Do I think more men on the prosecution team would bring a different strategy? No, I think it needs to be more poor people. Not poor people, but working class people. People who grew up, maybe even like sometimes you have lawyers where this is their second career. You need people who can relate to the real world New Yorker, and I don't feel that. Simone, how do I feel about Cassie naming her daughter Frankie? It's kind of weird. As in Frank Black. I don't think it was related to that. It actually, I don't know. It could be short for Francis or something. Oh, D-Rock is gone. I figured he was. With the information we have so far, do I think Diddy will be guilty of the charges? All right. And this is the question that I really wanted to conclude on for you guys. Hold on. There was another thing. Excuse me. I think, okay, here. Yes is the answer. The answer is I do think he's going to get, but I think he's absolutely going to get it for the prostitution. Prostitution is just too easy to prove. Also with prostitution, he's facing 10 years for that. But for the RICO, I think his stronger claims for RICO are going to be bribery, tampering with witnesses. This kidnapping is really iffy. And the distribution of the drugs is super strong. Those three right there, plus the prostitution, that'll be four. Sorry. I think those are the strongest ones that we have so far. Sorry, guys, my light just went out. But I think overall, prosecution is going to have to find a way to tell a story to the jurors that relate to the jurors' everyday lives. But keep in mind, people are like, he shouldn't go away for life for this. The jury has no idea he's facing life. No idea. And they're not allowed to know. All the jury is allowed to consider is guilt or innocence. They are not allowed to know he's facing life. And the thing that is in favor of the prosecution is the entire sentence is only determined by the judge as far as the number of years that he gets. So the jury gets to determine guilt or innocence. I think they're going to say yes to the prostitution across state lines. I think they're going to say yes to some of the elements of the RICO. And I'm very 50-50 about the trafficking. It could go either way. But the judge gets to decide the sentence. So I feel like because of how dangerous it's been made clear that Diddy is, even the fact that, the DV, as they're calling it, yes, the statute of limitations is expired for that, but the judge can still give him a harsher punishment. So if he's found guilty of just the prostitution, max time is 10 years. I could see a federal judge giving him 10 years for that alone because of the fact that it gives him a chance to punish him for the other things that they couldn't get to, if that makes sense. And judges are known for doing that. Judges will give you if they're only able to get you on one thing, A judge will give you the harshest possible sentence on that one thing after they've heard testimony of all the other things they could not get you on. Yeah. Herc Owen says total BS. He's going to walk. But Herb, I just need you to explain, because I'm curious, how's he going to walk on the prostitution? And it's a trial. He's going to pay for it. Yeah. I don't see it. He's not going to walk on all three. Remember, he's got 3 counts. He only needs to be found guilty of 1. I could see there being a mistrial on RICO if you got a rogue juror who's just like, no. This is just, I think they were just trying to railroad a black man. They're really looking for an OJ type decision. I don't think they're going to get it, but that's what they're looking for. So in the end, yeah, there's a trial tax. He'll pay for taking his trial. That could very likely happen. But I just think overall, I feel like I get that it's going to be 6 weeks of presentation for the prosecution, but when you're dealing with a key witness like Capricorn, and she's there to prove up 3 separate instances of kidnapping, and you knew good and well after each one, she went back and tried to work for that man, y'all should have done a better job of making clear as to why she kept coming back and that she had no other choice. I really would love for them to call Jimmy Iovine, but I'm sure you're going to sit up there and lie. It's very much the OJ case of our time. So, all right, guys, I got to go to bed. I'm going to be at court again tomorrow, so I need to get my rest. Put your questions below. Please share this, hit the like, and hit the subscribe, y'all. Good night. I'm your legal bestie, Attorney Simone, live from New York, covering the Diddy trial.